you must view. Charcha hai, so it'll continue like a charcha. And today for my charcha, I have a very interesting person. I have Rahul Kadri here, and Rahul is an architect, a globally award-winning architect, I would say. So there's a long-standing list of accomplishments, including being a supreme winner and a public building exterior category awards, surface design awards in London. So I'm hearing global recognition, and yet a choice to anchor in Mumbai, which is interesting. And today we're going to talk to you, Rahul, about a whole range of your life, your choices, your views on the city, and particularly how what stood out for me was social consciousness and urban ecology as a part of your work. So really a lot of curiosity. But I thought I should start with a confession about envy of architects. I think for me, I have to confess that when I look at my work as a social worker, I do things and they get undone very quickly. But when I imagine an architect, it's like your ideas take physical forms and last for years together, just the capacity to manifest that.
Right.
And you come from a family where there are architects. I want to start with your childhood, your relationship with the city, your relationship with this profession. Yeah, so just maybe if you can just get us started with your connection to the city and your choice of profession also as an architect.
Thanks, Abhishek. Yeah, as a young person, I came back to live in Mumbai full time at the age of 13 on Nepean Sea Road. Very, very lucky to have an apartment by the sea. So had a relationship with the sea since we're very young. And being an architect, my dad's an architect, and he's designed a lot of buildings on our road. And the city and the country. So we were exposed to the architectural language at a very early age about proportion and softness and overall form and modernity. So the conversations at home would, often center around ideas that my dad had or buildings he was building. So that was an early exposure. I also explored the city as a young person. I had a Doberman, a dog, growing up. So we would walk everywhere in the city. And so, whether it was, Chowpatty or Marine Drive, or, in those days, dogs were allowed in all the gardens. So we could go to the Hanging Gardens, where I'm now making an elevated walk in the forest on the slopes of Malabar Hill, a 12-acre forest. So I used to roam around over there in the forest with my dog and really generally explore all the areas, enjoy so many of the open spaces. The race course. Priyadarshini Park didn't exist in those days. It was a wasteland. They had reclaimed land and forgotten about it. So, so we used to go in there. There used to be stray dogs. We used to, my dog would chase and we really run around. And so take girlfriends there as well. It was a very secluded place. Actually, very few places in Bombay.
It's good to have those kind of places.
Even now, I suppose.
Yes.
But now a little bit more than then. So yeah, I explored many parts of the city, including the Ambarnath temples as an architect. Walked in Sanjay Gandhi National Park. So we've really been blessed in many ways of having a lot of open spaces left to us, by the British, in a sense. And over the years, though, because of the density of the city, and 1989 was the first time the notion of FSI was introduced, and ever since then, the density kind of has been going up, because it was not left to market forces now anymore, but there was a right given of how much you can develop. So everybody kind of valued their plots differently. Suddenly, FSI meant that the value of the plot had changed rather than just what was appropriate to do in that particular location. FSI changes mindsets. So that's what began to happen in 89, and the density, the city really started to go up. Along with that, I think, we didn't have effective long-range planning to take care of transportation more than anything else. I mean, we've had the BST, and the BST has grown, and we've had the local trains, and they have grown, but not enough. It's never been enough. So I think I had a very charming childhood. Once I was in Campion, and I was sent home because my hair was too long. I was told, get your hair cut and come. So from Colaba to Nepean Road, we walked home. Me and a friend. I said we didn't have any money to have a haircut, so we decided to walk. So we walked. It took us an hour and a half to come. It was so safe, so easy to walk and come. So we walked here and we walked back. So yeah, it was a very enjoyable time, and could really roam around very freely because density was low. And I used to also cycle a lot as a kid. I used to cycle around a lot. Parents were never worried. At the age of 13, I was cycling everywhere. And it was fairly safe to do that. So those are the kind of, when you reminiscence about that, our open spaces haven't kept up with the growing numbers. So it was probably adequate for the numbers we had then. As I'm talking about the 70s. So the open spaces were adequate for the numbers, but now, how many square meters we have per person has really dropped. And that is something, we now have a chance to actually work on. Yeah.
So I'll go through 3 of these because there are lots of threads I'm picking up. I think what I'm feeling most curious about, Rahul, is your connection with nature, because your childhood was in nature. You shared a bit about your boarding school days being in the hills. Nepean Road, you mentioned the sea, you mentioned Sanjay Gandhi National Park, and even these long walks were just a very un-Mumbaikar pace of being in one way, like the nature. And then the city is called a concrete jungle, and you've chosen to locate your work in the city. And I'm just curious how these two juxtapose, your love for nature and locating your work in the city, and how does that inform your work?
So first, my love for nature. I'm an introvert, so so even when I was in boarding school in Nainital, Sherwood is located up in the hills, and there's forest all around. And during the breaks, I would just walk in the forest. So I had friends, etc., but we would just kind of stroll in the forest. Just hanging out with nature is something I've loved ever since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. So I was sent to boarding when I was 7. So ever since then, it has been a deep need, and I believe all human beings crave 2 things: to live in the forest and to belong to a community. These are two very deep desires that we have, which modern living doesn't allow us to do. So in all our buildings, all our designs, I'm always trying to bring back the forest, the garden, always paying extra attention to it. So if you see, a lot of our projects will be university in the forest or villas in the forest. So that forest word comes up a lot in our work. So biophilia, really, because we know people thrive with nature when nature is around. And that is the challenge for Bombay. it really feels sad that we've lost a lot of it. But I think there's a lot of awareness now, and I'm very hopeful. We will be able to create much greener spaces, and because of the attention everybody is paying to being biophilic. So I think that we've reached a turning point. We've got Aditya Thakore, environmental minister, really concerned with being green and a green warrior himself. The Thakore family themselves, environmentalists. Uddhav Thakore spends weeks and weeks in forests as a photographer. So we're very lucky now to have, people like that who are in the forefront, who also listen when, so I'm the chairman of the Napier Road Citizen Forum, and when we went to Aditya Thakore through the forum to build this forest walk, he immediately, said yes. He's saying, tomorrow we will go to the site, we will see it. And we had 3 alternatives, and he says, this is the one we should do, and he really picked the best one. And his suggestions were excellent.
Amazing story. That's really nice to hear. I mean, that's amazing that the administration is also so keen on green.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And whoever we met in the administration, the additional municipal commissioner, Mr. Sela Rasu, Mr. Chahal, all of them, when they saw what we were trying to do, it was unstintingly, yes, this is something we should do. Rahul, tell us how much it's going to cost. The BMC, because we were saying, no, we'll get corporates to, to pay for it. They said, no. BMC will pay. We have money. So we said, okay, when the BMC wants, they have lots of money. So I think anything green is looked upon very favorably now. In fact, Napier Road now, we are working to streamline the amount of space available to cars, and in almost double the space available for people who walk, and adding cycle lanes. So this is something we're working pretty hard, and the AMC, Mr. Gaikwad, is very, very cooperative. He comes for inspections to make things happen. So there's definitely a spirit there to improve things.
Nice. That's inspiring to hear, Rahul. I want to go a little into something you shared, which stays with me, where you said that the FSI shift is a mindset shift. And, you said you've seen many decades now in Mumbai, when you said 70s, 80s, 90s, like you've seen a sweep of time. And one of the things that your description, your biodata says is typologies of patronage, models of patronage, shifting models of patronage. So I'm very curious about this link between the intangible, which is the mindsets and how people think about spaces, and then how they manifest physically in the city. And I want to look at this question in the context of the spirit of Mumbai, right? Like what should we value? What kind of mindsets should we hold that manifest beauty in the world, right? Like I don't know if I'm making my question clear, but I think just curious about what spirit do we need to imbibe to make the city more beautiful? What do we need to value to add beauty to the city?
I think that's a very important question. And it's a question that needs to be asked again and again. And it really leads us to another point of how do we create the city? How does this city grow or change or upgrade itself? What are the system we use to do that? Right? So when you talk about what should be our values, we may have the values, but will those values be heard when projects are being planned? And what is the mechanism we need to have these voices be heard? or the desires that people have, how do we, is there a mechanism to prioritize them? What is, you said, what is more important and what is less important? So that, and that's where we need to go back to reforms. And reforms, go back to the legal, the boring stuff, which is the Maharashtra Town Planning Act, which is, drafted in 1967. And those principles of planning don't apply anymore. That system and that process of planning doesn't apply anymore. Land use planning is known to be a failure, right? So land use planning and the way it is encoded in the Maharashtra Town Planning Act is, it's to do with the mindset of industrialization. Mumbai was an industrial and a port town, right? So to deal with pollution, planners came up with the idea, let us segregate. Let us have industry in this location, and if we pollute, it will only pollute that zone. And then let's have people live far away and have offices in a third location. So in that land use plan, so it came about for hygiene reasons.
Interesting.
We needed clean air. So that was the genesis of land use planning. But so the unintended consequences of that is congestion. Need for transportation. So you did not have such a need for transportation when there was mixed use. Right? If people worked and lived in the same place, they walked to work. So they didn't have to commute. The train lines were really built to bring produce from the hinterland to the ports. Now it's being used for people to go up and down, but not why it was made. So, we need to upgrade our principles of planning and try to understand again, why are we doing this? So, even now, our development plan has residential zone, commercial zone, this zone, that zone, right? What is the need for these zones anymore? Why can't it be mixed use? Why can't people live in one building and work in the other and walk
there? That sounds like straight out of a sci-fi fantasy, like you're working in the next door building. That's amazing.
But that's how it was. That's how it was.
Yeah, that would be so good.
The old part of Mumbai, the British part of Mumbai is like that, right? So Baidwan, Buleshwar, all of those places are like that. You had your shop down, you lived up, and you had your workshop behind. So there were the three things happening there. So what should be value? So before what should be value, how will these values be heard? So we need a mechanism in our planning, reform in our planning process, where you don't have planners sitting isolated somewhere, no matter how intelligent they are. If they're sitting in an office somewhere and trying to predict what citizens in a small neighborhood in Marol need, they will not know. They cannot know. It's not humanly possible for them to know about every neighborhood and what the neighborhoods need. So we need a system of continuous improvement, neighborhood planning, where people from the neighborhood tell the administration that these are our priorities for this year. This is what we need. This is what you should put in the budget. I think in one of the earlier talks, it was said that 500 crores of the budget, through 1.5 crores per corporate data, is unaccounted for, and nobody knows how or why it's spent. So if that money is really, if there are meetings with the citizens, asking what are your priorities, and then prioritize that and do that in that way. It makes so much sense. Or go one step further. There are now 2,000 cities in the world where 30% of the capital budget is decided by citizens. And these are not small cities. This is even cities as big as New York, whose budgets. Citizens decide how the money is spent. Surprisingly, this has been happening in Pune for the last decade. Because they need to improve the mechanism a little bit, but it's very possible. In today's day and age, it's very, very easily possible to, within 2 days, you can have, not even 2 days, within 4 hours, you can have a workshop, call the citizens to a hall, ask them what their priorities are. They'll say maybe 200 things in 2 hours. Have a rating system where you rate all of this together. At the end of 4 hours, you know exactly what the priorities of the citizens are, and you go ahead. So you use the intelligence of the community, which is there. I mean, we have some very, very smart, intelligent, aware people in every neighborhood who will contribute. So I think that expression, like having people express what they want, what they need, and having a mechanism to listen to the expression and prioritize that's important. So I don't know, long answer to.
No, that's quite it shows how much you thought about this, Rahul. Like, it really shows that you've given this so much thought. And what's coming to me is that, I mean, all opinions are equal, but some are more equal. And you seem to be a person who's given a lot of thought to this. And I'd be curious, as we're moving into this talk, about really what are your visions vis-a-vis things like transportation, things like budgeting. Like, I'm sure you thought and wished. And this is a great platform to share. So I'd love to hear from you. What have you been reminiscing about? What are the visions that are forming for you from your vantage point?
Yeah, see, the way I see it, as per BMC documented data, and very few of us know this, 50% of our people walk to work. 50%.
Wow, 50%.
50% walk to work. 25% take the train, 15% take the bus, and the rest private automobiles, scooters, bikes, autos, whatever. So that's a very small number, right? So all this congestion we speak about, it's really that very small number. It's or so. So we can move the needle there by 2%, right? Reduce that by 2%, a lot of the problems will be solved. Now, so the previous government initiated 13 metro lines, right? And a lot of east-west lines, which is great, which is, there's a lot of movement happening there. So a lot of east-west. And Metro 3, the only underground line, which is unfortunate that it's the only underground line. I wish they were all underground because they could have then been connected very well. And Metro 3 is going to be a success unlike any other because it's underground and it can go to the densest of localities without creating a problem. So you just need a little opening to go down, so not much land you need. Unlike all the ones which were unfortunately done in the north of Bombay, which could only be done where there was a very wide road. And the wide road was already a bypass road. It was not where people lived. So Versova or West Andheri, where there's a population, that's not where the metro is going to come. It's going to be on the link road, which is away. Anyway, I'm typing. Yes. So my vision is that we move the needle by 2, 3, 4%, where our dependence on vehicles comes down. More and more people are encouraged to use public transportation. And everywhere we can widen our pavements for people to walk. So many places, there's a tremendous wastage of space, road space, where there's a bottleneck, and because of the bottleneck, there's only one lane. But going further now, there are 3 lanes. So that 3 lanes is a waste of space. It needs to be given to pedestrians or cyclists. So I think the BMC has started thinking about this, about redesigning roads and doing it in a better way and engaging planners. So I do feel the more underground we can get transportation to happen, the better it'll be. And use our roads, if our roads can really become parks in which we walk. So green spaces, we can have 1 or 2 lanes for cars to go, but 1 or 2 lanes only, and slow the car down so that people are encouraged to take the metro or the bus, but treat this as public open space and give it to citizens who are using it the most, which is people who are walking or cycling. And then have beautiful local trees on them, which will flower in different times of the year. Wow. And then beautiful birds and butterflies. So as you're walking, you listen to some birds chirping instead of talk, etc. So that's my vision for the open spaces of the city and transportation. Take it underground.
And painted very, very beautifully, Rahul, I must say, with the birds and the walks. It's taking me into a possibility and an imagination that's beautiful. And I would, in fact, love to also hear your larger vision. But before I get there, I just want to acknowledge a couple of groups which have brought this together. So I want to start with Mumbai Live. Mumbai Live is helping us take this to larger audiences and is broadcasting this on this channel. So it's a great place to watch Mumbai-related content, and perhaps the only place where this kind of conversations are happening. I wish they would happen in more channels and more places, but for now, Mumbai Live is the only place where it is happening. Also want to acknowledge Mumbai First. Mumbai First is an advocacy initiative that is trying to make the city a better place through working with the Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar, all 3. And if you want to play a role, if you want to share ideas, suggestions, there's a Mumbai First email ID. And they would take up these issues. They would try their best to navigate and lobby people and try and make this happen. So very well-intentioned people working there. And the last is Blue Ribbon, an organization I also belong to, young people doing innovative work for the city, for all those people who are skeptical about young people doing nothing. Blue Ribbon will break that belief in a huge way. And you can support Blue Ribbon also with your ideas, with your resources. We are all over the social media space. So just these 3, and definitely Rahul, and I'll thank you at the end, but just a feeling of gratitude for this conversation. I think it's transporting me to new landscapes. So Rahul, curious about the overall vision for the city. We've already spoken about so many possibilities, and we always move this conversation to a 2050 vision, if you would have to dream of. And I have had the opportunity to travel a lot of cities around the world, and each time I go to a city, I find some element saying, "Kash ye Mumbai mein hota." I wish this would be in my city. And I'm sure there are others also who are seeing other cities as we travel more abroad, and I'm sure our administration has. So just one is, what's your vision for the city, and how else do we get this? You already said participatory budgeting. You already said people pressure, citizen participation. But if there are some mechanisms, so your vision and maybe a few pointers on, as citizens, what do we do? How do we start moving the needle there, start nudging things there?
Yeah, so, there are 2 opportunities in front of us right now, which are huge for the city. One is the gardens on the west coast because of the coastal road, right? So we're going to get the biggest linked set of gardens that the city has ever got. We're going to get 170 acres of gardens, which are going to be linked, right from Worli Sea Face to Mahalakshmi area, and Breach Candy and Napier Road. So there's actually 9 precincts, 9
Nice.
enclaves, along which is going to be this garden, and they're going to be big and small. So that as an opportunity for us is huge, huge. And what we do with it is crucial.
Oh, sorry, I just lost your audio for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Is it
got it back. Yeah.
Okay. So as
Gardens,
an opportunity for the city, the West Coast Gardens or the West Coast Parks system, it'll be, is huge. The other opportunity we have is to demonstrate to the world and to the rest of the country, because unfortunately the center has changed the Environmental Act and said any city in the country that feels it necessary to make a coastal road doesn't need environmental clearance. You can just make the road in the sea. So which is a huge violation of the act, really, but that's the law now. So it's going to happen a lot. And it destroys the entire intertidal zone, and the fishing industry really can be affected in a big way. So the opportunity for us, so the filling that's happened and the coastal road that's happening now, it's happening, but it's destroyed the ecology of the intertidal space completely. Fish spawning areas, the corals over there, all of that is gone. Now the opportunity is, can we build it back so that it was better than before? Are there ways to build that edge instead of doing a hard concrete edge, which we're most tempted to do? We put a bloody wall over there, thick wall. Instead of that, if it can be a softer edge which deals with the intertidal space, and there are ways, people have done it all over the world, and we can experiment and use the expertise from people all over the world and do it better with all the learnings that, all the experimentation that's happened all over the world, and do it better and actually come up with a model which can be a benchmark for the rest of the world. So this opportunity we have for the seabed, and our relationship with the West Coast is going to change tremendously. Not had Priyadarshini Park, we've got Marine Drive, Priyadarshini Park, Tata Gardens, Worli Sea Face, but it's sporadic. This is now a linked space. So our relationship with that coast, it's going to be a continuously available. It's going to fundamentally change. So my plea to the government, and I've been talking to Mr. Thakore and Mr. Chahal, and they've been listening, and they're very, very open, is the strategic brief of what we want to do here. Again, what we want to do, listen to citizens of what they want, rather than do this in some, black hole where nobody knows what's happening, and then suddenly it's all there and we think, oh shit.
Yes.
Let it be an open process and get the best people from India and all over the world to design it. So that's one, which is really going to transform things. The other thing which is happening, which I've been talking about a lot, is the BPT land, and that's 600 acres of land, which the previous government had actually given the planning rights away to the Port Trust, which this government is now taking back, which is great. And so that 600 acres and planning that is another very transformative thing for the city, because it's just huge amount of land that will be available. And again, brainstorming with the citizens of what is the best way to use it, rather than just appointing a planner and some bureaucrat, no matter how smart they are, and they are extremely smart, cannot come about it their own imagination. There is a huge amount of very passionate people who've been thinking about these things for a long time, who need to be listened to, or who ought to be listened to.
Yes.
So all our public projects going forward should be based on the brief coming from a discussion which is open and like a workshop or seminar series or something where there's discussion based, where you come up with the strategy. What is the best way? What's going to future-proof things for us, and then decide how it's done. I think I've written down a couple of other points. No, I think that's it. So these two parts of land is really going to change things. The other thing that's going to transform the city to a great way, I'm not really sure how, because they missed the train link, is the Trans-Harbour link, which was supposed to be car and train. Now we know that very few people actually travel by car. So Navi Mumbai also did not take off till the train link came. Right, that came much later. So here the same mistake is being made, that we've not had a train link along with the Trans-Harbour link. Originally it was there in the plan, and that could have changed Bombay a lot, because Bombay could have spread out onto the hinterland. Having said that, what I would like to see is probably a lowering of the density. Only because not because of open space, which is a problem, but because of water. Our water comes from 200, 300 miles away even now. So you increase the density, your need for water goes up. So there's too much population in one location. So I think Maharashtra as a whole needs to plan how it should develop. So let me just digress for a minute here on Maharashtra. If you have the density of 10,000 people per square kilometer, which is a wonderful density to have. It's a density. Paris has a little less than that. Tokyo has a little less than that. London is about that. Singapore is about that. Mumbai is already double that. It's 22,000 people per square kilometer. But the rest of the cities in Maharashtra are much lower in density. So we've actually done a study of, if there's 110 million people in Maharashtra, and if 70% of them move to cities in the next 30 years, we've calculated how much land will you need if the density is 10,000 people per square kilometer. So we found you need only 2.5% of the entire land mass of the state.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You don't need much.
Nice. Interesting. Yeah? Very interesting.
But we've already urbanized 3.5%. So we are already 30% higher. Because the other towns, the density is very low. So we need to kind of, probably, and we've identified that there are 10 cities that the government should invest in more, because there is water available, there are jobs available, this transportation is linked, etc., etc., rather than growing Bombay. They should disincentivize growing Bombay and incentivize growing these other places. Also, because you just need people to spread out. Germany has done that extremely well. They don't have any city more than, I think, a couple of million. They're really spread out. Region is developed extremely well. So overall, our urbanization strategy needs to be that as well. Sorry for the diagram.
No, it's interesting. These are very interesting ideas, Rahul. And our hope always is that these conversations will be seen and picked up by a lot of young people and a lot of people who are actually active citizens. So these will go into manifestos, which are locality manifestos, conversations with corporators, engagements with parties, and hopefully we have some people also from the administration looking at these. So I think these ideas are very important to bring out, so that they have a possibility of traveling and manifesting. So I'm really glad that you're sharing such a rich set of ideas.
Thank you.
So I think lastly, I would as we close with one of the things that got Mumbai Charcha started was the upcoming elections, and we want people to be voting. Definitely show up for voting. We're saying that first time voters, we should gun for 100% voting in the first time voters bracket. 18 to 23, every registered person should vote because that will set us up for a higher voting thing. Curious about your take on when we engage with our corporators, potential candidates, manifesto makers. What are a few things that we could press for from your perspective and nudge the governments, the parties, the councillors to take up as a part of their manifesto, their agenda?
So what we need to nudge them to do is to be democratic. Government for the people, by the people, of the people. Yeah, and you do that by who controls the money, right? So I think the main thing to ask for is a participatory budget making process, that we want a say in how our money is spent. Percent of the capital, I mean, which is a huge amount. I mean, 55,000 crores if it's the budget. It's a huge amount. So presently, I've been involved with the Nepean Road Citizens Forum, with the ALM, the umbrella ALM in the area, etc., etc. And we're always going and, saying, sir, please, sir, Kardo, sir, and they're very nice and they help, etc., and they do it. But it depends on the officer, right? Or the cooperator. That needs to change. These are our rights. So the BMC Act. So, when we talk about reforms that are far-reaching, these are the kind of reforms we need. The BMC Act needs to be changed so that citizens have a say in the budget. Citizens have a say in the improvement of the area, local area planning, that it becomes a legal process that the operators and the commissioner have to follow. Right now, they're doing it, out of largesse. Oh, we are doing it for you. No, that should be law. It should be that they have to do it. So till the law doesn't change and that they have to listen, they will not. So I think that's what we need to ask for. We need to ask for more democracy. Give us our rights and listen to us by right.
Yes, and not only when there are elections, but throughout the period.
Yeah.
So,
but I found, I found that they're willing to listen. This administration in particular listens a lot, and the attitudes of even the officers, etc., have changed quite a lot, and they're very open and they reach out. But it still needs to be a right. The BMC Act has to change. The Maharashtra Town Planning Act has to change. So we need lawyers, young lawyers who are willing to redraft.
Yes.
So sit with urban planners, sit with economists, and redraft these laws, and then present it, saying we want this to be the law.
Yeah, I mean, also to create the mahal, the buzz for it from the citizens end, the demand from the citizens end is, I think, something that we would definitely want to do. Rahul, one conversation we may not be able to have because of time, but I just want to amplify it, because in your sharing, I heard the rare time where ecology can coexist with development. When you spoke about the not doing the wall, but doing a gradual slope so that you restore it even better. And I just want to acknowledge that there are very few people who are able to hold the two. And I think in this conversation, I got a glimpse of that possibility. And just seeding that intent that on some other conversation, on some other forum, I'd love to pick your brains, because this is one of those tight tangles, especially for Gen Z and millennials. It's like, oh, we want nature, but then how do we do development? And so I think just want to amplify that note of inspiration. Any final thoughts, any final things you would like to share before we close?
I think I'm seeing a growing trend of citizen participation, which is fantastic. It's swelling. People's voices, people are voicing what they want more. They're coming out, participating. See, democracy is about citizens participating. And I think our mindset of that, instead of worrying about someone else to do it, wo nahi kar rahe, government nahi kar raha hai, we are the government, right? It's our government. So again, about mindsets, about taking charge, that, this is our lives and we can make a difference, and we will. So I think that mindset is growing, which is great. People aren't just sitting back and blaming. People are taking action. They're moving out in whatever small way. They're making a difference, which is fantastic.
Yes, great to know that. Also, the not-for-profit sector, the Samaj, at least, we are trying and collaborating way more than we would earlier. Earlier, we were all siloed and busy with our own projects, and we're realizing that's not sufficient. We need to start coming together and amplify impact. So thanks for this, Rahul. This was a great conversation, and it evokes so much imagination and positivity in me. So thank you so much for sharing, and more power to you. I really wish, very deeply wish, that voices like yours reach more and more corridors of power and actually manifest, because they're voices of beauty, really. So thank you so much, Rahul.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you. You're very kind, and it's been wonderful talking with you.
Same
And
here.
your enthusiasm has got me going. I don't know what all I've said, but thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, everyone. And our next Mumbai Charcha is with an entertainer, Devil the Rapper, and we'll have some interesting conversations there. So please tune in next week as well, and we'll continue this series. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
Rahul, if you could just stay on for a minute or two once we pause. I just thought we'll
okay.
just once the streaming pauses, maybe.